Hello friends and welcome. Tonight I will be reading for you two stories by Lucy Maud Montgomery, The Understanding of Sister Sara and The Prodigal Brother. Next week we will return with the first installment of the book entitled A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. If you enjoy these readings, I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel. And now, let us unwind. And let us begin this story. The Understanding of Sister Sara. June 1st. I began this journal last New Year's. Wrote 2 entries in it, and then forgot all about it. I came across it today in a rummage. Sara insists on my cleaning things out thoroughly every once in so long. And I'm going to keep it up. I feel the need of a confidant of some kind, even if it is only an inanimate journal. I have no other. And I cannot talk my thoughts over with Sara. She is so unsympathetic. Sara is a dear good soul, and I love her as much as she will let me. I am also very grateful to her. She brought me up when our mother died. No doubt she had a hard time of it, poor dear, for I never was easily brought up, perversely preferring to come up in my own way. But Sara did her duty unflinchingly, and well, it's not for me to say that the result does her credit. But it really does, considering the material she had to work with. I am a bundle of faults as it is, but I tremble to think what I would have been if there had been no Sara. Yes, I love Sara, and I'm grateful to her, but she doesn't understand me in the least. Perhaps it is because she is so much older than I am, but it doesn't seem to me that Sara could really ever have been young. She laughs at things I consider most scared and calls me a romantic girl, in a tone of humorous toleration. I am chilled and thrown back on myself, and the dreams and confidences I am bubbling over with have no outlet. Sara couldn't understand. She is so practical. When I go to her with some beautiful thought I have found in a book or poem, she is quite likely to say, Yes, but I noticed this morning that the braid was loose on your skirt, Beatrice. Better go and sew it on before you forget again. A stitch in time saves 9. When I come home from a concert or lecture, yearning to talk over the divine music or wonderful new ideas with her, she will say, Yes, but are you sure you didn't get your feet damp? Better go and change your stockings, my dear. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So I have given up trying to talk things over with Sara. This old journal will be better. Last night, Sara and I went to Mrs. Trent's musicale. I had to sing, and I had the loveliest new gown for the occasion. At first, Sara thought my old blue dress would do. She said we must economize this summer, and told me I was entirely too extravagant in the matter of clothes. I cried about it after I went to bed. Sara looked at me very sharply the next morning, without saying anything. In the afternoon, she went uptown and bought some lovely pale yellow silk organdy. She made it up herself. Sara is a genius at dressmaking. And it was the prettiest gown at the musicale. Sara wore her old grey silk made over. Sara doesn't care anything about dress, but then she is 40. Walter Shirley was at the Trents. The Shirleys are a new family here. They moved to Atwater 2 months ago. Walter is the oldest son and has been at college in Marlborough all winter, so that nobody here knew him until he came home a fortnight ago. He is very handsome and distinguished-looking, and everybody says he is so clever. He plays the violin just beautifully and has such a melting, sympathetic voice and the loveliest, deep, dark, inscrutable eyes. I asked Sarah when we came home if she didn't think he was splendid. "He'd be a nice boy if he wasn't rather conceited," said Sarah. After that, it was impossible to say anything more about Mr. Shirley. I'm glad he's going to be in Atwater all summer. We have so few really nice young men here. They go away just as soon as they grow up. And those who stay are just the muffs. I wonder if I shall see Mr. Shirley soon again. June 30th. It does not seem possible that it is only a month since my last entry. It seems more like a year. A delightful year. I can't believe that I am the same Beatrice Mason who wrote then. And I am not, either. She was just a simple little girl, knowing nothing but romantic dreams. I feel that I am very much changed. Life seems so grand and high and beautiful. I want to be a true noblewoman. Only such a woman could be worthy of a fine, noble man. But when I tried to say something like this to Sarah, she replied calmly, "My dear child, the average woman is quite good enough for the average man. If she can cook his meals decently and keep his buttons sewed on, and doesn't nag him, he will think that life is a pretty comfortable affair. And that reminds me, I saw holes in your black lace stockings yesterday. Better go and darn them at once. Procrastination is the thief of time." Sarah cannot understand. Blanche Lawrence was married yesterday to Ted Martin. I thought it the most solemn and sacred thing I had ever listened to. The marriage ceremony, I mean. I had never thought much about it before. I don't see how Blanche could care anything for Ted. He is so stout and dumpy, with shallow blue eyes and a little pale moustache. I must say I don't like fair men. But there is no doubt that he and Blanche love each other devotedly, and that fact sufficed to make the service very beautiful to me. Those two people pledging each other to go through life together, meeting its storm and sunshine hand in hand, thinking joy the sweeter because they shared it, finding sorrow sacred because it came to them both. When Sarah and I walked home from the church, Sarah said, "Well, considering the chances she has had, Blanche Lawrence hasn't done so well after all." "Oh, Sarah," I cried, "she has married the man she loves, and who loves her. What better is there to do? I thought it beautiful." "They should have waited another year at least," said Sarah severely. "Ted Martin has only been practicing law for a year, and he had nothing to begin with. He can't have made enough in 1 year in Atwater to justify him in setting up housekeeping. I think a man ought to be ashamed of himself to take a girl from a good home to an uncertainty like that. Not if she loved him and was willing to share the uncertainty," I said softly. "Love won't pay the butcher's bill," said Sarah with a sniff, "and landlords have an unfeeling preference for money over affection. Besides, Blanche is a mere child, far too young to be burdened with the responsibilities of life. Blanche is 20, 2 years older than I am. But Sarah talks as if I were a mere infant." July 30th. Oh, I am so happy. I wonder if there is another girl in the world as happy as I am tonight. No, of course there can't be, because there's only one Walter. Walter and I are engaged. It happened last night when we were sitting out in the moonlight under the silver maple on the lawn. I cannot write down what he said. The words are too sacred and beautiful to be kept anywhere but in my own heart forever and ever, as long as I live. And I don't remember just what I said, but we understood each other perfectly at last. Of course, Sarah had to do her best to spoil things. Just as Walter had taken my hand in his and bent forward with his splendid earnest eyes just burning into mine, and my heart was beating so furiously, Sarah came to the front door and called out, "Beatrice, Beatrice, have you your rubbers on? And don't you think it is too damp out there for you in that heavy dew? Better come into the house, both of you. Walter has a cold now." "Oh, we'll be in soon, Sarah," I said impatiently, but we didn't go in for an hour, and when we did, Sarah was cross, and after Walter had gone, she told me I was a very silly girl to be so reckless of my health, and risk getting pneumonia loitering out in the dew with a sentimental boy. I had had some vague thoughts of telling Sarah all about my new happiness, for it was so great I wanted to talk it over with somebody, but I couldn't after that. Oh, I wish I had a mother. She could understand, but Sarah cannot. Walter and I have decided to keep our engagement a secret for a month. Just our own beautiful secret, unshared by anyone. Then, before he goes back to college, he is going to tell Sarah and ask her consent. I don't think Sarah will refuse it exactly. She really likes Walter very well. But I know she will be horrid. And I just dread it. She will say I am too young, and that a boy like Walter has no business to get engaged until he is through college, and that we haven't known each other long enough and know anything about each other, and that we are only a pair of romantic children. And after she has said all this, and given a disapproving consent, she will begin to train me up in the way a good housekeeper should go, and talk to me about table linen and the best way to manage a range, and how to tell if a chicken is really a chicken, or only an old hen. Oh, I know Sarah. She will set the teeth of my spirit on edge a dozen times a day, and rub all the bloom of my dear, only little romance with her horrible practicalities. I know one must learn about those things, of course, and I do want to make Walter's home the best and dearest and most comfortable spot on earth for him, and be the very best little wife and housekeeper I can be when the time comes. But I want to dream my dreams first, and Sarah will wake me up so early to realities. This is why we determined to keep 1 month sacred to ourselves. Walter will graduate next spring. He is to be a doctor. And then he intends to settle down in Atwater and work up a practice. I am sure he will succeed, for everyone likes him so much. But we are to be married as soon as he is through college, because he has a little money of his own, enough to set up housekeeping in a modest way, with care and economy. I know Sarah will talk about risk and waiting and all that, just as she did in Ted Martin's case. But then Sarah does not understand. Oh, I am so happy. It almost frightens me. I don't see how anything so wonderful can last. But it will last, for nothing can ever separate Walter and me. and as long as we are together and love each other, this great happiness will be mine. Oh, I want to be so good and noble for his sake. I want to make life one grand, sweet song. I have gone about the house today, feeling like a woman consecrated and set apart from other women by Walter's love. Nothing could spoil it, not even when Sara scolded me for letting the preserve burn in the kettle because I forgot to stir them while I was planning out our life together. Sara said she really did not know what would happen to me some day if I was so careless and forgetful. But then, Sara does not understand. August 20th. It is all over. Life is ended for me, and I do not know how I can face the desolate future. Walter and I have quarreled, and our engagement is broken. He is gone, and my heart is breaking. I hardly know how it began. I am sure I never meant to flirt with Jack Ryan. I never did flirt with him either, in spite of Walter's unmanly accusations. But Walter has been jealous of Jack all summer, although he knew perfectly well he needn't be. And 2 nights ago, at the Morley dance, poor Jack seemed so dull and unhappy that I tried to cheer him up a little and be kind to him. I danced with him 3 times and set out another dance just to talk with him, in a real sisterly fashion. But Walter was furious, and last night when he came up he said horrid things. Things no girl of any spirit could endure, and things he could never have said to me if he had really cared one bit for me. We had a frightful quarrel, and when I saw plainly that Walter no longer loved me, I told him that he was free, and that I never wanted to see him again, and that I hated him. He glared at me and said I should have my wish. I never should see him again, and he hoped he would never again meet such a faithless, fickle girl. Then he went away and slammed the front door. I cried all night, but today I went about the house singing. I would not for the world let other people know how Walter has treated me. I will hide my broken heart under a smiling face bravely. But, oh, I am so miserable. Just as soon as I am old enough, I mean to go away and be a trained nurse. There is nothing else left in life for me. Sara does not suspect that anything is wrong, and I am so thankful she does not. She would not understand. September 6th. Today I read this journal over and thought I would burn it. It is so silly. But on second thought I concluded to keep it as a reminder of how blind and selfish I was, and how good Sara is. For I am happy again, and everything is all right, thanks to Sara. The very day after our quarrel, Walter left Atwater. He did not have to return to college for 3 weeks, but he went to visit some friends down in Charlottesville. And I heard, Molly Roach told me, Molly Roach was always wild about Walter herself, that he was not coming back, but would go right on to Marlborough from Charlottesville. I smiled squarely at Molly, as if I didn't care a particle, but I can't describe how I felt. I knew then that I had really been hoping that something would happen in 3 weeks to make our quarrel up. In a small place like Atwater, people in the same set can't help meeting. But Walter had gone, and I should never see him again. And what was worse, I knew he didn't care, or he wouldn't have gone. I bore it in silence for 3 weeks, but I will shudder to the end of my life when I remember those 3 weeks. Night before last, Sara came up to my room, where I was lying on my bed with my face in the pillow. I wasn't crying. I couldn't cry. There was just a dreadful dull ache in everything. Sara sat down on the rocker in front of the window, and the sunset light came in behind her and made a sort of nimbus round her head, like a motherly saint's in a cathedral. "Beatrice," she said gently, "I want to know what the trouble is. You can't hide it from me, and something is wrong. I've noticed it for some time. You don't eat anything, and you cry all night. Oh, yes, I know you do. What is it, dear?" "Oh, Sara!" I just gave a little cry and slipped from the bed to the floor, laid my head in her lap, and told her everything. It was such a relief, and such a relief to feel those good motherly arms around me, and to realize that here was a love that would never fail me, no matter what I did or how foolish I was. Sara heard me out, and then she said, without a word of reproach or contempt, "It will all come out right yet, dear. Write to Walter and tell him you are sorry." "Sara, I never could. He doesn't love me any longer. He said he hoped he'd never see me again." "Didn't you say the same to him, child? He meant it as little as you did. Don't let your foolish pride keep you miserable." "If Walter doesn't come back to me without my asking him, he'll never come, Sara," I said stubbornly. Sara didn't scold or coax any more. She patted my head and kissed me, and made me bathe my face and go to bed. And then she tucked me in, just as she used to do when I was a little girl. "Now, don't cry, dear," she said. "It will come right yet." Somehow I began to hope it would when Sara thought so, and anyhow it was such a comfort to have talked it all over with her. I slept better than I had for a long time, and it was 7 o'clock yesterday morning when I woke to find that it was a dull grey day outside, and that Sara was standing by my bed with her hat and jacket on. "I'm going down to Junction Falls on the 7:30 train to see Mr. Conway about coming to fix the back kitchen floor," she said. "And I have some other business that may keep me for some time, so don't be anxious if I'm not back till late. Give the bread a good kneading in an hour's time, and be careful not to bake it too much." That was a dismal day. It began to rain soon after Sara left, and it just poured. I never saw a soul all day except the milkman, and I was really frantic by night. I never was so glad of anything as when I heard Sara's step on the veranda. I flew to the front door to let her in, and there was Walter, all dripping wet, and his arms were about me, and I was crying on the shoulder of his mackintosh. I only guessed then what I knew later on. Sara had heard from Mrs. Shirley that Walter was coming to Marlborough that day without coming back to Atwater. Sara knew that he must change trains at Junction Falls, and she went there to meet him. She didn't know what train he would come on, so she went to meet the earliest and had to wait till the last, hanging around the dirty little station at the falls all day while it poured rain, and she hadn't a thing to eat except some fancy biscuits she had bought on the train. But Walter came at last on the 7:50 train, and there was Sara, 2 pounds on him. He told me afterwards that no angel could have been so beautiful a vision to him as Sara was, standing there on the wet platform with her tweed skirt held up and a streaming umbrella over her head, telling him he must come back to Atwater because Beatrice wanted him to. But just at the moment of his coming, I didn't care how he had come. or who had brought him. I just realized that he was there. And that was enough. Sara came in behind him. Walter's red arms were about me, and I was standing there with my thin-slippered feet in a little pool of water that dripped from his umbrella. But Sara never said a word about colds and dampness. She just smiled, went on into the sitting room, and shut the door. Sara understood. The Prodigal Brother. Miss Hannah was cutting asters in her garden. It was a very small garden, for nothing would grow beyond the shelter of the little, grey, low-eaved house, which alone kept the northeast winds from blighting everything with salty spray. But, small as it was a miracle of blossoms and a marvel of neatness. The trim brown paths were swept clean of every leaf or fallen petal. Each of the little square beds had its border of big white quahog clamshells, and not even a sweet pea vine would have dared to straggle from its appointed course under Miss Hannah's eye. Miss Hannah had always lived in the little grey house down by the shore, so far away from all the other houses in prospect, and so shut away from them by a circle of hills, that it had a seeming isolation. Not another house could Miss Hannah see from her own doorstone. She often declared she could not have borne it if it had not been for the lighthouse beacon at night, flaming over the northwest hill behind the house, like a great, unwinking, friendly star that never failed even on the darkest night. Behind the house, a little tongue of the St. Lawrence Gulf ran up between the headlands, until the wavelets of its tip almost lapped against Miss Hannah's kitchen doorstep. Beyond, to the north, was the great crescent of the Gulf, whose murmur had been Miss Hannah's lullaby all her life. When people wondered to her how she could endure living in such a lonely place, she retorted that the loneliness was what she loved it for, and that the lighthouse star and the faraway call of the Gulf had always been company enough for her, and always would be. Until Rolf came back. When Rolf came home, of course, he might like a livelier place, and they might move to town or up country as he wished. "Of course," said Miss Hannah, with a proud smile. "A rich man mightn't fancy living away down here in a little grey house by the shore. He'll be for building me a mansion, I expect, and I'd like it fine. But until he comes, I must be contented with things as they are." And people always smiled to each other when Miss Hannah talked like this, but they took care not to let her see the smile. Miss Hannah snipped her white and purple asters off ungrudgingly, and sang, as she snipped, an old-fashioned song she had learned long ago in her youth. The day was one of October's rarest, and Miss Hannah loved fine days. The air was clear as gold-hued crystal, and all the slopes around her were mellow and hazy in the autumn sunshine. She knew that beyond those sunny slopes were woods glorying in crimson and gold, and she would have the delight of a walk through them later on when she went to carry the asters to sick Millie Starr at the bridge. Flowers were all Miss Hannah had to give, for she was very poor, but she gave them with a great wealth of friendliness and goodwill. Presently a wagon drove down her lane and pulled up outside of her white garden paling. Jacob Delancey was in it, with a pretty young niece of his, who was a visitor from the city, and Miss Hannah, her sheaf of asters in her arms, went over to the paling with a sparkle of interest in her faded blue eyes. She had heard a great deal of the beauty of this strange girl. Prospect people had been talking of nothing else for a week, and Miss Hannah was filled with harmless curiosity concerning her. She always liked to look at pretty people, she said. They did her as much good as her flowers. "Good afternoon, Miss Hannah," said Jacob Delancey. "Busy with your flowers as usual, I see." "Oh, yes," said Miss Hannah, managing to stare with unobtrusive delight at the girl while she talked. "The frost will soon be coming now, you know, so I want to live among them as much as I can while they're here." "That's right," assented Jacob, who made a profession of cordial agreement with everybody, and would have said the same words in the same tone had Miss Hannah announced a predilection for living in the cellar. "Well, Miss Hannah, it's flowers I'm after myself just now. We're having a bit of a party at our house tonight for the young folks, and my wife told me to call and ask you if you could let us have a few for decoration." "Of course," said Miss Hannah, "you can have these. I meant them for Milly, but I can cut the west bed for her." She opened the gate and carried the asters over to the buggy. Miss Delancey took them with a smile that made Miss Hannah remember the date forever. "Lovely day," commented Jacob genially. "Yes," said Miss Hannah dreamily. "It reminds me of the day Ralph went away 20 years ago. It doesn't seem so long. Don't you think he'll be coming back soon, Jacob?" "Oh, sure," said Jacob, who thought the very opposite. "I have a feeling that he's coming very soon," said Miss Hannah brightly. "It will be a great day for me, won't it, Jacob? I've been poor all my life, but when Ralph comes back, everything will be so different. He will be a rich man, and he will give me everything I've always wanted. He said he would. A fine house and a carriage and a silk dress. Oh, and we will travel and see the world. You don't know how I look forward to it all. I've got it all planned out, all I'm going to do and have. And I believe he will be here very soon. A man ought to be able to make a fortune in 20 years, don't you think, Jacob?" "Oh, sure," said Jacob, but he said it a little uncomfortably. He did not like the job of throwing cold water, but it seemed to him that he ought not to encourage Miss Hannah's hopes. "Of course, you shouldn't think too much about it, Miss Hannah. He mightn't ever come back, or he might be poor." "How can you say such things, Jacob?" interrupted Miss Hannah indignantly, with a little crimson spot flaming out in each of her pale cheeks. "You know quite well he will come back. I'm as sure of it as that I'm standing here. And he will be rich, too. People are always trying to hint, just as you've done to me, but I don't mind them. I know." She turned and went back into her garden, with her head held high. But her sudden anger floated away in a whiff of sweet pea perfume that struck her in the face. She waved her hand in farewell to the callers, and watched the buggy down the lane with a smile. Of course, Jacob doesn't know, and I shouldn't have snapped him up so quick. It'll be my turn to crow when Rolf does come. My, but isn't that girl pretty? I feel as if I'd been looking at some lovely picture. It just makes a good day of this. Something pleasant happens to me most every day, and that girl is today's pleasant thing. I just feel real happy and thankful that there are such beautiful creatures in the world, and that we can look at them. Well, of all the queer delusions, Jacob Delancey was ejaculating as he and his niece drove down the lane. "What is it all about?" asked Miss Delancey curiously. "Well, it's this way, Dorothy. Long ago, Miss Hannah had a brother who ran away from home. It was before their father and mother died. Ralph Walworth was as wild a young scamp as ever was in prospect, and a spendthrift in the bargain. Nobody but Hannah had any use for him, and she just worshipped him. I must admit, he was real fond of her too, but he and his father couldn't get on at all. So finally, he ups and runs away. It was generally supposed he went to the mining country. He left a note for Hannah, bidding her goodbye and telling her that he was going to make his fortune and would come back to her a rich man. There's never been a word heard tell of him since, and in my opinion, it's doubtful if he's still alive. But Miss Hannah, as you saw, is sure and certain he'll come back yet, with gold dropping out of his pockets. She's as sane as anyone everywhere else, but there is no doubt she's a little cracked on that pint. If he never turns up, she'll go on hoping quite happy to her death. But if he should turn up and be poor, as is 10 times likelier than anything else, I believe it most kill Miss Hannah. She's terribly proud for all she's so sweet, and you saw herself how mad she got when I kind of hinted he mightn't be rich. If he came back poor after all her boasting about him, I don't fancy he'd get much of a welcome from her. And she'd never hold up a head again, that's certain. So it's to be hoped, say I, that Ralph Walworth never will turn up, unless he comes in a carriage and 4, which is about as likely, in my opinion, as that he'll come in a pumpkin drawn by mice. When October had passed, and the grey November days came, the glory of Miss Hannah's garden was over. She was very lonely without her flowers. She missed them more this year than ever. On fine days she paced up and down the walks, and looked sadly at the drooping, unsightly stalks and vines. She was there one afternoon when the northeast wind was up and doing, whipping the Gulf waters into whitecaps and whistling up the inlet and around the grey eaves. Miss Hannah was mournfully patting a frosted chrysanthemum under its golden chin when she saw a man limping slowly down the lane. "Now, who can that be?" she murmured. "It isn't any prospect man, for there's nobody lame around here." She went to the garden gate to meet him. He came haltingly up the slope and paused before her, gazing at her wistfully. He looked old and bent and broken, and his clothes were poor and worn. Who was he? Miss Hannah felt that she ought to know him, and her memory went groping back amongst all her recollections. Yet she could think of nobody but her father, who had died 15 years before. "Don't you know me, Hannah?" said the man wistfully. "Have I changed so much as all that?" "Ralph?" It was between a cry and a laugh. Miss Hannah flew through the gate and caught him in her arms. "Ralph, my own dear brother. Oh, I always knew you'd come back. If you knew how I've looked forward to this day." She was both laughing and crying now. Her face shone with a soft gladness. Ralph Walworth shook his head sadly. "It's a poor wreck of a man I am come back to you, Hannah," he said. "I've never accomplished anything, and my health's broken, and I'm a cripple, as you see. For a time I thought I'd never show my face back here, such a failure as I be. But the longing to see you got too strong. It's naught but a wreck I am, Hannah." "You are my own dear brother," cried Miss Hannah. "Do you think I care how poor you are? And if your health is poor, I'm the one to nurse you up. Who else than your only sister? I'd like to know. Come right in. You're shivering in this wind. I'll mix you a good hot currant drink. I knew them black currants didn't bear so plentiful for nothing last summer. Oh, this is a good day, and no mistake." In 24 hours' time, everybody in Prospect knew that Ralph Walworth had come home, crippled and poor. Jacob Delancey shook his head as he drove away from the station with Ralph's shabby little trunk standing on end in his buggy. The station master had asked him to take it down to Miss Hannah's, and Jacob did not fancy the errand. He was afraid Miss Hannah would be in a bad way, and he did not know what to say to her. She was in the garden, covering her pansies with seaweed, when he drove up, and she came to the garden gate to meet him, all smiles. "So you've brought Ralph's trunk, Mr. Delancey. Now, that was real good of you. He was going over to the station to see about it himself, but he had such a cold I persuaded him to wait till tomorrow. He's lying down asleep now. He's just real tired. He brought the seaweed up from the shore for me this morning, and it played him out. He ain't strong, but didn't I tell you he was coming back soon? You only laughed at me, but I knew." "He isn't very rich, though," said Jacob jokingly. He was relieved to find that Miss Hannah did not seem to be worrying over this. "That doesn't matter," cried Miss Hannah. "Why, he's my brother. Isn't that enough? I am rich if he isn't. Rich in love and happiness. And I'm better pleased in a way than if he had come back rich. He might have wanted to take me away or build a fine house, and I'm too old to be making changes. And then he wouldn't have needed me. I'd have been of no use to him. As it is, it's just me he needs to look after him and coddle him. Oh, it's fine to have somebody to do things for. Somebody that belongs to you. I was just dreading the loneliness of the winter, and now it's going to be such a happy winter. I declare, last night, Ralph and I sat up till morning talking over everything. He's had a hard life of it. Bad luck and illness right along. And last winter in the lumber woods he got his leg broke. But now he's come home, and we're never going to be parted again as long as we live. I could sing for joy, Jacob." "Oh, sure," assented Jacob cordially. He felt a little dazed. Miss Hannah's nimble change of pace was hard for him to follow, and he had an injured sense of having wasted a great deal of commiseration on her when she didn't need it at all. "Only, I kind of thought, we all thought you had such plans." "Well, they served their turn," interrupted Miss Hannah briskly. "They amused me and kept me interested till something real would come in their place. If I'd had to carry them out, I dare say they'd have bothered me a lot. Things are more comfortable as they are. I'm happy as a bird, Jacob." "Oh, sure," said Jacob. He pondered the business deeply all the way back home, but could make nothing of it. "But I ain't obliged to," he concluded sensibly. "Miss Hannah's satisfied and happy, and it's nobody else's concern. However, I call it a curious thing."